What have I done? Hello and welcome back to Ellis Reviews, and thank you for subscribing if you have, and if you haven't, the button, you know where the button is. I'm now the proud owner of this, which is a Microsoft Surface Laptop 4. You probably never thought you'd hear me say that. I am, after all, a Mac guy, and I reckon this is my first Windows laptop in about 20 years. That makes this a big deal, particularly after I kicked up an almighty fuss a few weeks back when I gave my thoughts on the Windows 11 announcement. And just to reiterate, I didn't review Windows 11 in that video. I just reacted to what I thought was Microsoft's dreadful attempt at launching this beta version of one of their biggest operating system updates in recent memory. They didn't do their users or Windows itself any justice, and that annoyed me because I was a Windows user for many, many years, and it holds quite a special place in my heart. And again, that is why I was so excited to get my hands on something like this. Now, over the last 2 or 3 days, I've been using this Microsoft Surface Laptop 4, obviously with Windows 10 installed, and I've got a few initial thoughts. So firstly, you're probably wondering which Surface Laptop 4 I bought. Now, just like the M1 MacBook Air, which I've had over the last 6 months and has been one of the best laptops. Actually, no, it's been the best laptop I've ever owned. This is the base spec M1 MacBook Air. So it's 8GB of RAM, 256GB SSD, and that's it. It's the cheapest one you can get at $999, and it's just wonderful. So I wanted to do the exact same thing with the Surface Laptop 4. So this is the base spec version. I bought this in the UK from a company called John Lewis. I definitely recommend going to them. They were a little bit cheaper. They also give you 2 years warranty, which is quite nice. And this was £979, I think, although normally it's $999. So comparatively with the M1 MacBook Air, it's identical in terms of price. Now, in terms of the specs in this one, there is an AMD Ryzen 5 4680U. No idea what that is, but that's the chip that you get in this one. And it's got 8GB of RAM, 256GB SSD, just like the M1 MacBook Air. That's it, basically. Like I say, 2 years warranty from John Lewis. Nice. Because I went for the base spec version, you can only get the base spec, I think, in this color. The only thing you can't change with the base spec is what they use for the keyboard cover. By cover, I just mean the base, really. And it uses this Alcantara stuff that you sometimes find on car seats and stuff. And it's this kind of soft material, which looks quite nice, actually. And I'll come on to how it feels, because that's one of my initial observations. But you can't go for the metal version of this unless you get the next spec up, which adds another £200, I think, to it. In terms of the design, again, this is my first Windows laptop for quite a long time, and I was surprised by how nice it looks, actually. That's totally unfair, because there are some lovely Windows laptops out there, including things like the Dell XPS series, and there's all sorts that I've been shown recently by people who've been trying to get me to buy a Windows machine. But getting one in your hands, you realise that they've come a long way. And this is a Microsoft product as well, you know? And I think if you compare it against the M1 MacBook Air, which is a classic, very classic design, they're very similar. Tapered design there, which I will show you in some B-roll, but it's very thin. It's a nice looking laptop, you know? I would quite have liked the matte black version, but you had to spend more to get that, which doesn't make sense, but there you go. Yeah, a nice looking laptop. But there are 5 things that I have identified with this, being a Mac user. So coming from a Mac to a Windows PC, there's 5 things in my first 2 or 3 days of using it that have stuck out. I've heard lots and lots of arguments for and against adding touchscreen support to Mac OS. I've had my own opinion on it, which has been, don't bother, what's the point? We've got iPadOS and iOS for that. Whereas some people vehemently disagree with that. They want to see Macs enable touchscreen. I didn't really understand that until I got this Surface Laptop 4, which is a touchscreen. You can touch the screen. You can touch it and interact with Windows with your fingers. It's actually really useful. Now, the key thing here is that it's not, you can't really, well, okay, you can touch anything. So anything on the screen you can touch and interact with like this. But not all of the elements of the user interface design in Windows are designed for that. So there are some very, very small touch targets that just don't really work with your finger. It's much better to use your mouse for that. What I found with that is that I've been using the trackpad 95% of the time, but the other 5% of the time is when I've just naturally reached out to the screen to press something. And it might be something like the send button on an email, or it might be the timer start and stop on Toggle, which is the application that I use to track my time. There's just certain things on the screen, I can't explain why, but certain things on the screen where I want to touch them. And And I do. And this has brought me to a bit of a conclusion about this whole touchscreen macOS thing, which is it's not a big deal. I think if Apple just added it, people would just use it naturally when it felt natural to do so. I think Apple and a lot of other users are just scared of it ruining the Mac experience. It won't, because it doesn't get in the way. You know, I don't have to touch the screen on this laptop. I can just use the mouse and the keyboard. It will work like a computer has worked my entire life. But if I feel compelled just to reach out and touch something on the screen because it looks like it's touchable, I can, and it works. Some people may not even realise that you can touch these screens, and it doesn't make any difference to the way that Windows works. It's just handy. Like I say, natural is the word I keep coming back to, and I just naturally use it occasionally. Now, okay, this might be a kind of instance of new toy syndrome. A few people have pointed that out, and that's a very good point, a very valid point. So I'll see if I am still touching that screen after, let's say, 2 or 3 months of using it. So touch support, I love it in Windows. It's great. You can't use it throughout the entire operating system. It's just handy to have. And Apple just add it. Just put it into macOS. Give us a touchscreen Mac. Keyboard shortcuts. Oh, if there's one thing that has been really frustrating with this, it's not Apple's fault, it's not Microsoft's fault, it's just life. It's keyboard shortcuts. So before I went into the Mac world, I was a Windows user, so I was very used to using, I've got to remind myself again what I'm saying actually, I was very used to using Alt as the modifier key. So Alt to, Alt C to copy, Alt V to paste. Thinking back, when I switched to Mac, that kind of getting your head around using Command as, basically you're going from one key to another to use those keyboard shortcuts. And like I say, in macOS it's Command V, Command C. I remember that being a bit of a learning curve, but since I've been using Macs, which has been over the last 10, 15 years, whatever, that's just it's muscle memory now. Oh, it's been a real learning curve. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it's just, I find it amazing how used we get to keyboard shortcuts. And it's been the one thing that has slowed me down while using this Windows computer. I know I can remap keys and stuff like that, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep things traditional. I want to live in a proper Windows ecosystem. So it's just been a bit of a pain. So I thought I'd mention that. If you're going between Windows and Mac, what do you do actually? Do you remap the keys if you use both platforms? I'm interested to hear, because the keyboard shortcuts have been a bit of a pain. Now, the priority this week with the Surface laptop was to get it just set up and ready to work. I didn't have a huge amount of time to delve into the settings and have a play around really. So I've just been using it for work. So it's been set up with the kind of basics that I need for that. However, curiosity did get the better of me occasionally, which led me to click on the start menu and just have a look at the start menu. What a mess. It's a bit, I kind of liken it to having left what I thought was a lovely tidy house 20 years ago and coming back to find it's been trashed by squatters. I don't know what they've done to the start menu. I remember it just being very simple. It popped up and you had programs in there, you had your documents, and you had the ability to turn the computer off. Not anymore. It's just this whole world of confusion. So you bring it up, and on the left-hand side, you get this kind of expandable menu that gives you access to the common areas. So you can very quickly get to settings, documents, all that sort of stuff. Fine. But then to the right of that, there's an alphabetical list of what I think is installed apps. Again, I've not studied it properly, but it seems to be just a great big list of your apps. And then to the right of that, there's this kind of tiled interface, which looks very similar to what was on Windows Phone. You can move the tiles around, I assume you can add tiles to it. Again, I've not played with it yet, but regardless of that, and I will play with it, I promise, it just looks like a mess out of the box. And remember, this is a Microsoft Surface laptop, so this is about the most pure Windows experience you're going to get. They don't slap loads of bloatware on it and tweak it. It's just what Microsoft intends when it comes to Windows, which makes it even more worrying that the start menu looks like that out of the box, because it's just this impenetrable mess. It was one of those instances where I opened it, looked at it and thought, don't know where to start here, so closed it, pretended it wasn't there, and haven't opened it since. Face ID. So Windows Hello. I got this wrong in an earlier video. I suggested Windows Hello was something to do with like the Windows version of Siri. You all laughed at me about that. Quite understandably, it's wrong. Windows Hello is basically their Face ID for Windows. It includes more than facial recognition. It includes things like the PIN code you can set it. It's basically a lot of the security that surrounds getting into your Windows laptop. But on this, it uses facial recognition, and it's brilliant. It's great. Now, some of the people on my Discord server, I think Rob actually, my podcast host, pointed out, he's much smarter than me on this sort of stuff. He did point out that apparently Windows Hello and the way they use facial recognition isn't quite as good, let's say, that's probably a safer way of saying it, as what we see on iPhones with Face ID. I don't know about that. I don't know enough about it. It's probably true, but who knows? All I do know is that having facial recognition on your laptop is just brilliant. It's just so convenient. You open it, it's got this little red thing that flashes to kind of indicate that it's looking at your face, and then if it recognises you, you get this nice little animation saying, "Hello, Mark," good morning, whatever. It's just a nice, friendly little welcome into your laptop, and super, super convenient. Now, on the Mac, I rely on, I'm not wearing it today, but I normally rely on my Apple Watch to log me in automatically, and that's just, it's super convenient. It's as convenient as Face ID, granted. But when I'm not wearing, like I'm not today, wearing my Apple Watch, I have to use either Touch ID if I've got it on the Mac or type in my password. Whereas with this, I just open the lid and look at it and it unlocks. And it's really fast, always works, really, really accurate. Okay, if there are a few security issues with it, that's not great, and hopefully that improves over time. But again, a little bit like touch support, it just reveals why Apple has to add Face ID to future Macs. Just do it. I know there's a lot of understandable concern over how thick the casing would have to be to kind of hold all of the Face ID gubbins. So why haven't they put it into the new iMac? I just think it's Apple being a bit obnoxious. I just think they get something in their head that they're not going to do. And the more people say, we want it, the less they're likely to do it. I think if we had a Face ID option, or if it was just as standard on all new MacBooks, a lot of people would love it. And I would take a slightly thicker case for that to happen. The last thing I wanted to mention during my very, very early days with the Surface Laptop 4 is the keyboard. Now, I need a little bit more time with it, admittedly, but I'm getting to the stage where I'm gonna say, I think it's the best laptop keyboard I've ever used. And there's a few reasons for this, and two of them are possible flaws. So, well, flaws probably the wrong word, but so the first one is that Alcantara case. It's just very nice to rest your hands on. I think that versus the kind of cold metal of a MacBook, for longer periods of time, it's just more comfortable. It's nice to rest your hands on. It's like you're on like a little carpet. It's just very nice. Now, the problem with the Alcantara covering is that it's probably not going to wear very well. And indeed, if you speak to anyone who's had a Surface machine with that case on it, they'll tell you the same thing. It looks pretty grubby after a while, which is a shame. I reserve judgment because I've not had mine long enough to see if that happens. But just from a typing experience, it's nice. The other thing is the amount of flex on the actual keyboard itself. This took me by surprise, but on the Surface 4's keyboard, the closer you get to the middle of the keyboard, the more it visibly flexes. The whole thing depresses. Again, I don't know if that's a design flaw or if it's just slightly cheaper materials. I have no idea whatsoever. But I have a feeling that it adds to the typing experience for some reason, because the key travel's great. So going back to the keyboard itself, the key travel is great. The keys themselves are plastic. They're not, suede or Alcantara. They're proper plastic keys. And it's got just enough keyboard travel, I think, given the size of the laptop, because it is very thin. It's still very thin, but they've somehow managed to get decent travel in there. Better than what you get on the current MacBook keyboards. I think the combination of that with the nice armrest that you've got and that kind of bendy chassis. From a typist's point of view, I do a huge amount of typing each week. So I write blogs every day. I do a lot of typing. But when it comes to laptops, I am a bit fussy. I hated the butterfly keyboard on the MacBooks. It was just terrible. This one on the Surface Laptop 4, I think is superb. I think it's really, really good. In summary, I've really enjoyed it. I've actually enjoyed using an operating system that I'm not familiar with. You feel a bit lost. When I've been kind of hunting around for certain things that I need to do, I have felt like a stranger in like a foreign town. It's been a bit strange, but I quite like that feeling. I quite like not knowing how to do things and discovering things. Windows is great. There's nothing wrong with Windows at all. And going back to my video about Windows 11, I was angry at Microsoft, not Windows itself. I know it's a beta product. That was not the point of my video. A lot of people kind of misunderstood that. So if you did, I'm sorry, that wasn't the case. I've got a big affection for Windows, and this has kind of confirmed that I've probably been missing out on a few things. So as I've explained today, the touch support, Windows. Windows Hello, the keyboard on this as well. So It appears it's very durable as well. That didn't damage it. Damaged the desk though, great. I'm gonna spend much more time with this. This is something which I'm gonna really dig into. Expect lots more content on the way that compares macOS with this. And also I will do a proper full review of the Surface Laptop 4 in the next few weeks. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell so you don't miss out on that. But in the meantime, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Cannot believe I just did that.